June 14, 2005. Incheon International Airport, Seoul. A Korean air flight from Hanoi taxis to the gate, and the most wanted man in South Korea prepares to walk off it. He is 68 years old. He has spent 5 years and 8 months on the run, wanted by Interpol, hunted by prosecutors, his face printed on wanted posters. Some of those posters were made by his own former factory workers. But this man is not a gangster or a spy or a cartel boss. He is the founder of Daewoo, the builder of South Korea's second-largest business empire. Cars, ships, electronics, construction, more than 300,000 employees in over 100 countries. And according to prosecutors, he is also the architect of the largest accounting fraud ever brought to court. $43 billion, bigger than Enron and WorldCom combined. This is the story of how Kim Woo-choong built an empire out of borrowed money and invented profits, and how its collapse threatened to drag an entire country into a second financial crisis. The strangest part? When he finally fell, half of Korea still couldn't decide whether to hate him. To understand how one man could lose more money than most countries produce in a year, you first need to understand the machine that made him possible. Because Daewoo was not a normal company, it was a chaebol. And a chaebol was never really a business. It was a deal. In 1961, General Park Chung-hee seized power in a country that was, at the time, poorer than most of sub-Saharan Africa. His plan for fixing that was brutally simple. The state would pick a handful of family-run companies, flood them with cheap credit, and point them at the export market. The government told the banks who to lend to. The banks obeyed. It worked. Economists called it the miracle on the Han River. But the miracle came with a defect built into its core. Success was measured in size, not in profit. Grow, and the loans kept coming. Stop growing, and they stopped. By the late 80s, a handful of names, Hyundai, Samsung, LG, Daewoo, accounted for close to half of everything South Korea produced. Every chaebol played this game, but nobody played it like Kim Woo-choong. To understand why, you have to go back to a teenager selling newspapers in a war zone. Kim Woo-choong was born in Daegu in 1936. His father was a school teacher who rose to become a provincial governor. Then came the Korean War, and North Korean forces kidnapped his father and took him across the border. He was never seen again. Kim was a teenager. Overnight, he became his family's breadwinner, hawking newspapers in the streets of a wartime city. He would later say that he learned to run before his customers could change their minds. He clawed his way to an economics degree at Yonsei University, and in March 1967, at the age of 30, he borrowed $10,000 and founded a tiny textile trading firm with 5 associates. He named it Daewoo. It means great universe. The man worked like a machine, 100 hours a week. He claimed he had not taken a full day off in decades, and his executives were expected to keep up. Then in 1976, the government handed him a bankrupt heavy industry company and asked him to save it. Within a year, it was profitable. And that year, Kim learned the lesson that would build his empire and eventually blow a $43 billion hole in his country's banking system. In Korea, you didn't need profits to grow. You needed the government to owe you a favor and a bank that couldn't say no. From that moment, the Daewoo playbook never changed. Find a dying company, buy it with borrowed money, absorb it, repeat. In 1978, he took over a half-finished shipyard at Okpo and turned it into one of the largest shipbuilders on Earth. The same year, he went into the car business with General Motors. In 1983, home electronics, textiles, ships, cars, televisions, construction sites in Libya and Sudan. All of it stacked on top of debt. Other businessmen feared leverage. Kim treated it as raw material. By 1989, he was a national hero. His autobiography, It's a Big World and There's Lots to Be Done, became one of the best-selling books in Korean history. Schoolboys recited his sayings. Politicians courted him. And when the Cold War ended, Kim saw his big moment. In 1993, he launched what he called global management, the most aggressive overseas expansion any Korean company had ever attempted. Car plants in Poland and Uzbekistan, factories in Romania, Vietnam, India, hundreds of subsidiaries. At its peak, Daewoo's trading arm handled roughly 1 out of every $10 South Korea earned from exports. From the outside, it looked unstoppable. Here's what almost nobody knew. The numbers were fiction. The center of the fiction was not in Seoul, it was in London. Daewoo ran an office there called the British Finance Centre, BFC. It appeared on no organization chart. It was registered with no Korean regulator. Court records would later reveal what it actually did. The BFC manufactured paperwork, falsified bills of lading, fake commercial invoices, phantom export documents for goods that never moved. Korean banks lent real money against that paper, and the group's books swallowed the difference. Year after year, Daewoo reported assets that did not exist and profits that had never been earned. By the end, the gap between the books and reality reached 41 trillion won, roughly $43 billion. Inside the BFC's ledgers, investigators found something else, a special account reserved for the personal spending of one man. Its code name was KC, King Chairman. In November 1997, the machine that fed all of this stopped. The Asian financial crisis reached Seoul. The won collapsed. Foreign lenders pulled their money out, and South Korea, the 11th largest economy in the world, ran out of dollars. The IMF assembled $58 billion, the largest rescue package it had ever put together. Now you would expect a man sitting on a mountain of hidden debt to quietly swim for shore. Woo-choong did the opposite. He dived deeper. While every other chaebol slashed costs and sold assets, Daewoo expanded. In 1998, on the worst year in modern Korean history, Kim increased the group's debt by roughly 40%. He took over Ssangyong Motor, a rival carmaker drowning in its own losses. He financed it all by flooding the market with Daewoo bonds. His logic was pure chaebol. Recessions are temporary, but factories are forever. Grow through the storm, and the government will never let you sink. He was wrong about one thing. There was a new government. President Kim Dae-jung had been elected on a promise to break the chaebol system. His regulators ordered the conglomerates to cut their debt, not grow it. And in October 1998, they capped how many bonds any single group could issue. For a company living on borrowed money, that cap was an oxygen valve, and it had just been closed. 1999 became a slow-motion bank run. Daewoo needed to roll over billions in short-term debt every few months, and suddenly, no one was buying. In July, its creditors extended an emergency lifeline of around 4 trillion won. Kim pledged nearly everything he personally owned as collateral. It bought 6 weeks. On August 26, 1999, the creditors took control. 12 core Daewoo companies were forced into a debt workout, a polite term for the largest corporate collapse the world had ever seen. How much debt was there? Nobody could agree. $50 billion. 60. Some estimates ran close to 80. When the hole is that deep, precision stops mattering. 2 months later, Kim Woo-choong boarded a plane for what was described as a routine business trip to China. He did not come home for 5 years and 8 months. What the investigators found once the chairman was gone took years to untangle. 41 trillion won of fabricated accounting, 9.8 trillion won of loans obtained with forged documents, $3.2 billion smuggled out of the country through the BFC in London. Prosecutors charged more than 40 Daewoo executives. 7 went to prison. An estimated $400 million had gone out in bribes to officials, auditors, and politicians who might otherwise have asked questions. And the man at the center of it all was living quietly in Vietnam, a country where Daewoo had built hotels, factories, and highways, and where the chairman was still received as an honored guest. At home, laid off, Daewoo workers printed wanted posters with his face on them. Interpol circulated his name. Kim stayed away, until that flight from Hanoi. On June 14, 2005, Kim Woo-choong walked off the plane at Incheon, leaning on a cane, and let the prosecutors take him. He told reporters he was ready to accept whatever was waiting for him. On May 30, 2006, a Seoul court found him guilty of masterminding the fraud, 10 years in prison, and an order to forfeit $22 billion, a sum every person in that courtroom understood would never actually be collected. He served about 2.5 years, much of it in a hospital bed. On December 30th, 2007, the president of South Korea pardoned him. The empire itself was carved up and sold. General Motors bought the car business out of bankruptcy. By 2011, the Daewoo badge had disappeared from Korean showrooms entirely. The shipyard, the construction firm, the trading house all survived under new names and new owners. The cleanup was paid for the way these cleanups always are, by taxpayers, through tens of trillions of won in public bailout funds. Kim never really apologized for the numbers. To the end of his life, he insisted he had been made a scapegoat, that every chaebol cooked its books, and his real crime was getting caught while refusing to shrink. He spent his final years back in Vietnam, training young Koreans to build companies. He died in December 2019 at 82. Half the obituaries called him a criminal. The other half called him the last giant of the Korean miracle. Here is the uncomfortable truth at the center of the story. Kim Woo-choong never stole the way a pickpocket steals. He faked $43 billion because he genuinely believed the growth would one day make the lies true. That is what makes men like him dangerous. Every founder who fakes one small number believes exactly the same thing. Daewoo means great universe. It lasted 32 years. If you want to see the other side of this coin, not a chairman inventing profits, but a single trader hiding losses until they killed a 200-year-old bank. Watch our film on Barings next. This is the Capital Files. Subscribe and follow the money.